Mike Schopp and the Bulldog game night, 8:15 kickoff, Bills and Dolphins. We're getting you ready. That's what this is. With Chris Brown and Eric Wood to call the play-by-play from the Northwest Bank broadcast booth. Tonight's broadcast is presented by Great Lakes Building Systems. Our business is protecting your business. Even with more than 4 hours to go before kickoff, I feel like some people I'm looking at are more, quote, ready for this game than I am. They might be need to get me ready.
You do get that. You do get that feeling. Yes.
You do.
Yes.
But we love that.
Indeed, we do.
And we also love our guest on the Western Hotline, Armando Salguero. So here's the story, Armando. You're our Dolphins guy, even though you cover the league, and we've called you so many times. You're always so gracious with your time. And this time we're like, we ought to give him a break. We're always calling Armando. He's not just a Dolphins reporter.
Yeah, we're always calling him just about Miami. Let's hold off.
But somebody who listens to us tweets Armando and says, Dolphins week, when are you coming on? And beautifully, Armando tweets back whenever they ask. And at that point, well, I stopped feeling bad.
Let's call Armando
about the frequency and started to feel like, let's talk again. So here it is.
Well, that's the power of social media. I'm not sure if it's the positive power or the negative power of social media that you've been almost forced to put me on.
Well, I do feel like it worked for the good. But I guess we'll have to see how this goes. But I'm confident because we've done this, a few dozen times now over the years. So I feel pretty confident.
I'll do my
best. That we'll make it work for you. So, Armando, how are you looking at Miami coming into this game? We've spent an inordinate amount of time this week on our show pondering Mike McDaniel's future and if the Bills could win a game in such a way tonight that it forces a detonation of the Miami Dolphins. Is that overreacting? They were in a game last week that they could have won. Achane did not have to step out of bounds on that long reception. What is the state of things overall right now as you see it with Miami?
Yeah, so ponder the reaction, first of all. It's not an overreaction to believe that change may be coming to the Miami Dolphins. Before the season began, I did a story on head coaches already on the hot seat. They were 0-0 this year, but they came into the season on the hot seat. And sure enough, Mike McDaniel of the Miami Dolphins was one of the guys that I wrote about. So here we are. They went to Indianapolis. Indianapolis did not punt. That's bad, by the way. Yeah. They play their home opener against the Patriots in Miami in September, and they're the team that loses their mind late in the game and seems to lose urgency, while the Patriots seem to get stronger in the 93-degree heat. And, by the way, they made Drake May look like frickin' Joe Montana. He completed 82% of his passes. So you've made Daniel Jones look like, like he's really good. He's not. You've made Drake May look like he's a Hall of Famer. Not yet. And now you're absolutely, if you're a Dolphin fan or anyone that understands the NFL, thinking things could happen when you're facing Josh Allen with that substandard secondary and that recent atrocious play. And then you look at the schedule. We're on Thursday night, the 18th. The Miami Dolphins don't play until Monday night, the 29th. That's 11 days. That's like a mini bye that they're getting. A lot of teams that make in-season changes, they do it during byes. And so it should perk your ears up to see how the Dolphins perform or don't tonight.
I'm not sure it's any solace, but Armando, the Colts have still not punted. And that was a long time ago. But, yeah, point taken. Well, is there as you see it, is there a threshold tonight? Like, this might be, I feel like maybe the Dolphins would say the opposite. This might be the absolute worst game to have be next on their schedule. But if you compete in it or even win it, that changes a lot. Is there a threshold where, like, okay, we have to make a change or we don't? The line is like 12. So if it's a competitive game, maybe you'd say, well, this is about what was supposed to happen. If it's a game where the Bills, and we've seen it in this rivalry last year early in the season in Miami, where the Bills just run away with it, it seems like it's over by halftime. Is that maybe around where you think the breaking point might lie?
You're onto something, and that's based on, I would say to you, without revealing sources, people around the building in Miami, they know they have to show urgency tonight. They know they have to compete. They know that they cannot, on a night where theirs is the only game in the entire league, and there's going to be a lot of eyes on that game, they can't be seen to be laying down and not being interested on the third game of the season. If they look like that, absolutely Mike McDaniel is, I'm not saying he's not going to get on the flight to go home. I'm just saying that, it's going to be an interesting day tomorrow or the next day if the Dolphins get blown out.
Right, the alarm could go early on Friday morning, maybe earlier than normal.
How do you think players treat that? So if players know that, he would have his backers. I mean, there's a lot of guys on a team. He would have his supporters on a team and maybe his critics. Like, do you think players get to a point where they would sabotage? I mean, I wouldn't want to assume that from anybody, but does it sort of feel like that in a locker room on a night like this?
No, not at all. Okay. They don't want to sabotage anything because they'd be self-sabotaging in the process. They still believe generally, and I do say generally because I don't talk to like all 53 guys or anything like that, but the 2 or 3 guys that I still am in contact with, they still believe that this season can be salvaged. 0-2 is not to them a death knell. Now, statistically speaking, 0-2 is a death knell already. And only one team since, 2000 has started 0-3 and made the playoffs, and that was the 2018 Houston Texans. So the idea of the Dolphins being able to salvage the season if they lose tonight is, I'm not saying it's preposterous, but it's a long shot at best. But going into it, they still think that they're going to be able to, right the ship.
How shorthanded are they, Armando? We know that there were areas of concern even before the season began and injuries happened about the secondary and about the offensive line, and now there have been injuries. So, how capable, just from a personnel standpoint, we spent a lot of time talking about, the locker room and chemistry and culture and these things, and if McDaniel has their attention, do they have enough good players?
I think they have enough good players. Tyreek Hill is still a good player. Jalen Waddle is a good player. He's going to play tonight, despite his injury. It's in certain places where they are lacking and in certain places where they don't think they were lacking that they're not getting production from. For example, they traded Jonnu Smith, their tight end, who scored 8 touchdowns last year, to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they signed Darren Waller because they thought that Darren Waller was capable. Well, Darren Waller was retired last year.
Yes.
And before that, he didn't play for the Giants because he was hurt the whole time. So Darren Waller has shockingly missed the first 2 weeks of the season because he's hurt. And so the Dolphins are getting 0 out of the tight end position. Why? Because they got rid of a good player and replaced them with an injury-prone player who's coming out of retirement. Is that smart? I don't think so. I mean, I'm not a general manager, but I'm not a moron. And so maybe you'll get some argument about the moron part.
No, I'm using it. If you don't want it, I'll take it.
It's not ridiculous. It's not ridiculous to think people, if you're going to trade away a really good player, you better have a good player, in the pipeline to replace him with.
I'm not a general manager, but I'm not a moron. I'll use that, but I always credit to Armando. So the part of the point here is that Waller is literally not retired? You're saying that? Because it's only really been sort of in the ether so far.
He's on the roster in name only. I've caught as many passes as he has.
Yes. With Armando Salguero on the Western Hotline, Mike Schopp and the Bulldog. We're out at the stadium outside Gate 5. Bills and Dolphins tonight. How do you see this Bills team, Armando? Like, it's another season that has started swimmingly for them. They've been living among the Super Bowl favorites this time of year at least for several years in a row. But everybody just kind of wants to know how it ends for these guys. Is this year maybe, as you see it, different because of, for one thing, how Kansas City has started? Or is there something about what you see in the Bills that might make you more optimistic? I'm not saying you have to feel that way. I just wonder, like, if you're taking their start this year to mean something other than what it's meant in previous years.
Well, let's start with their training camp, right? I mean, everyone saw it. It was there for everyone to see on Hard Knocks. And the takeaway from that, I thought, was, my God, these guys, yeah, they're a football team, but they are so bonded. They are so united. I mean, I've been around football teams that were, teams, but there was issues. Guys didn't like each other. Guys didn't go out, together. The wide receivers didn't hang out. The quarterback room didn't go to the Italian restaurant every week. It wasn't that. This team in Buffalo has that, and it's darn impressive. Then, again, everybody saw it. That bonkers comeback against, the Ravens,
yep,
that does something for a team. Everybody's going, whew, wow, we survived that. That's not how the Bills react to that. The way the Bills react to that is, we did that. We knew we were capable of doing that. We did it. Now we know for sure that we can do that at any point. We are never out of it. We are always going to go 60 minutes, and there is nothing that you can tell us that we can't do it, because we did it against Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, who we couldn't tackle or figure out for most of the game. And most teams don't have Lamar Jackson or Derrick Henry. So, those things matter, I think, and they have repercussions and consequence when you're in December and January and ultimately in February.
Those, if I may jump back in time a little bit, Dolphins teams where you might have been in the locker room all the time in the 90s when they had that great rivalry with the Bills. I mean, the Bills, of course, did not get to the absolute top either, but Miami was a little bit more like these Bills, where good teams most years, but just couldn't break through, couldn't get to a Super Bowl once Kelly arrived here, and, they just ended up falling short. Is there a parallel? Is there something you think? I always love to hear you talk about, the history of the Dolphins, in the Marino years. Were they flawed, or were they just a team that ended up going against a team or two that were just too good?
Well, they ran into a Buffalo club that, if you'll recall, Jim Kelly used to say, it was Joe Robbie Stadium back then. And they used to, the way the NFL would set it up is Miami would go to Buffalo in September because it's not the North Pole in September. Then the Bills would come to South Florida in December, and that's because South Florida in December is a very nice place, and South Florida in September is the outer ring of hell. So Jim Kelly would say, we own Joe Robbie Stadium in December. And sure enough, the Dolphins would get out to fast starts a lot, and then suddenly late in the year, somehow the Bills would catch them. And definitely when Miami had to go up there for those playoff games, and trust me, I covered all of them, the Dolphins would go, what is this thing? What's that white thing on the ground? What? Oh, that's snow. Oh, we can't play in that. We're not doing this. And it would be a blowout. I think it happened like 2 or 3 times in 4 years. And so back then, the Dolphins knew that they were a good team, but they were in a division with a very good team. And ultimately, the Bills never knew that they weren't the elite team. But I think history shows that the elite teams, were just better than them in the Super Bowl.
North Pole Bulldog versus Outer Rim of Hell. We need Nick Bakay here. Advantage push. I don't know where you'd rather play. But that's a classic matchup.
I am not impartial, so I would have to vote North Pole myself.
The Bills' only loss to the Dolphins in 14 meetings was in the Outer Rim of Hell when they had to go there in September, and they outgained Miami by like 300 yards and still lost. That's the one Dolphin win in 14.
Just a few years
matchups.
back now, yeah.
Yes.
Armando, we've talked around a lot of different subjects here. The coach, his sustainability, the roster, injuries. Where is Tua Tagovailoa in all of this, in your eyes? Like, is he capable of lifting this team in a time where they really need someone to give them a lift?
I don't know. His history would suggest he's not, because his history against very good teams, and not just very good teams, but playoff caliber teams, has been that in the Mike McDaniel era, there's something like 14 and 15. I'm sorry, 4 and 15 against playoff teams in that time. That's their record against playoff teams. The Dolphins, have this reputation as being this fanciful flight, 21st century offense that just scores a bunch of points and put a 70 burger on the Denver Broncos a couple of years ago, and they're going to throw the ball all over the place and everything like that. And that's true when they're facing bad teams. The Denver Broncos that year fired their coach. Not fired their coach, excuse me. Were coming off of firing their coach. And they do that a lot to teams like the Jets and other teams that are drafting early. But when they play teams that are good, it doesn't always work out. And that obviously, the focus for that shifts to who? Tua Tagovailoa, because he's the highest paid player on the team. He's one of the highest paid players in the NFL, and it's his job to lift his team on his shoulders and get them over that obstacle. He hasn't been able to do it.
Armando, thanks for your time as always. We were delighted to see what you wrote on social media. Excited to get you on. Enjoy the game tonight.
All right, gentlemen. Always a pleasure.
Appreciate that. Armando Salguero on the West Her Hotline, getting connected with the fans, which today is happening in person, which is great. Powered by Verizon, the official 5G partner of the Buffalo Bills. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog will have phone lines open next at 803-0550. It's time for us to take a break. We'll be back in a snap. It's brought to you by Snapdragon.